Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Desi Vijay. I'm a North South national team member and a coordinator for webinars. I'm really glad to see you all here today. We are starting our webinar series for this year after a few months of break, leaving you all in peace with the regional contest preparations. What better way to start that season than having our own youngster talking about her personal experience, her take, and general outlook on this very important topic, which is generally creates more questions than answers. It's evident in the interest of this topic, as I have seen more than 1,200 of you have registered, and I see already 150 of you already, listening in here, and so this is one of the record things I have ever seen since we started these webinars. So I'm really glad to have this happen today, and welcome to yet another exciting webinar. Before we proceed further, let me be done with some general housekeeping comments. This webinar is being recorded as we speak, so we will send you a link for this recording by tomorrow, and also a link to the presentation PowerPoints of the presenter. If you want to see some other old webinars we have been conducting, we have some of them loaded into the North-South YouTube channel. Please register, log in, and see those webinars at your leisure. If you have any questions today you want to ask the speaker, please type out those questions in the questions tab. We would collect them and ask the speaker on behalf of your after the presentation is completed. I would only request please be patient and do not keep repeating the questions. We post the questions as in similar order we receive. Please note that we will try to address all your questions. However, due to time limitations, we may not be able to cover everything. If your question is not asked, it could be that a similar question was already asked and answered, or we are simply out of time. But however, if you feel that your question was not adequately answered, or think of new questions, please send us an email at webinars@northsouth.org or contact the presenter directly. She will provide you with her contact information later, and you can get your answers. Thank you for your understanding. We also have a couple of poll questions in the beginning of the session. We will please answer them as quickly as possible. We may have only we can have only one poll at a time and open, so we have to close down the ones. And also, before you leave, please fill in the feedback questions. It is very important to us to make us understand where we are going right or wrong. Also, it will help this youngster to understand how she did today and what she should do to improve it. So please, fill in those feedback when you leave the session. And also, I thank you all for this opportunity for this successful webinars we have been conducting so far with your encouragement and support. And we are always looking out for new topics, new presenters, and new avenues. So please cooperate with us, help us out, and then we are looking forward for your suggestions for future topics, or participate in those webinars by attending and also taking part in discussions. And also, if you have interested in a topic, and whether you can be a presenter or somebody else can be a presenter, please let me know, and then we can work with you further and then make that happen. Anyway, thanks for listening, and then let's move on to the scheduled program because we have a packed house here. We are now moving on to the webinar called Understanding the College Application Process. We have a very enthusiastic and accomplished youngster amongst us today to talk to us about and share her knowledge and experience with us. But before I go ahead and introduce the speaker, I want to get the sense of our audience. So I will have the poll questions right now, and then please answer them. And then after the results, we will go through with the presentation. So the quick poll I'm having is, what age group you are in. Either you're a parent or a volunteer or college bound or high schooler or middle schooler or elementary schooler. I think I'll start closing this one. We have about 80% of the people voted. And then let me go through the other one also, just in case. I want to know, how familiar are you with the college application process? Not at all, a little bit, somewhat, very familiar, or mostly familiar, or very familiar?
Just curious, I couldn't see what were the results of the
Yes.
first poll.
Yeah, we will show it to you because the panelists don't participate in the polls, so probably it doesn't show up for you. But once I close it, I'll share that with you and let me know whether you see. Okay, so let me also close this out. Then we'll share the poll. So, Maya, are you able to see anything now?
I don't think
No?
so. No.
Okay. So the result for the first poll is 50% of them are parents or volunteers or adults, and 36% of them are high schoolers. So that's what you want that to be, right?
Yeah.
More than almost 90%. And then the rest of them are middle schoolers.
Okay.
And then the second one is well distributed. 30% of them saying they not at all familiar with the process, and 36% said a little bit, and 27% say somewhat. So more than 95% of them are not really sure what to expect. So the work is cut out for you now, and then you can convince them as to how to go about. So it gives me a great pleasure to welcome Maya Sriram, a 17-year-old high school senior in Bay Area. Her interests mainly lie in business and science, although she's explored almost every subject there is. Throughout her time in high school, Maya has participated in many variety of extracurricular activities. She is currently the president of the school largest club, DECA, as well as a TED Talks club. She has over 650 hours of volunteering by working and interning with more than 10 different national and non-profit organizations, including she has created her own called Art for Neuroscience. So she has also won several national, international awards and multiple AP classes, and then near perfect scores in SAT. So I can keep going on and on, but most thing I wanted to say was she has already participated in many of our webinars before as an MTP, Make the Pro session in science, and also presented a webinar herself on cloning. So she has is a very good communicator, and then she has been a good force with the youngsters. So I hope she's here to convince a lot of minds as to what they have to do. On behalf of all the audience, Maya, I welcome you for this session. Thank you. And then the floor is yours now.
All right. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to see so many of you guys here. I'm happy that I'm able to share my process and my thoughts with all of you guys. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it. Yeah.
All right, perfect. So I know what you guys are here for. So without further ado, let me just get straight into the college application process from the perspective of graduating high school senior. This is gonna be a bit more informal because I want to interact with you guys. You may even have me answer questions in the middle, all of that. So I'm going to treat it more as like a conversation in a sense rather than a presentation. I'm just sharing information with you guys. So anyway, first I kind of wanted to start off with a little description of my story and who I am. So, when I was younger, I always had a big, sorry, there was a question from the audience. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, I can
Yes,
hear
Maya.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. All right.
Yeah, the audience can't speak, so we cannot hear the audience, but they will post their questions in the Q&A, and then we will answer them at the end. We will read the questions out for you.
Okay, no worries. 1 second. This is okay. Anyway, back to my story. So since I was young, I had like a big interest in business. So when I was very, very young, I used to make these little mini notebooks, and then I thought that I could sell them. So I'd sell them, to friends and family and all of that and get like a few dollars, things like that. And that's kind of where I and my family realized, okay, there's a bit of an interest in business here, right? So I continued with that. I did a few other things. I did like monkey bar classes and cooking classes for my neighborhood. I did a plant off competition, all sorts of things like those. And I just kind of built this interest, involved myself in more things, joined an entrepreneurship club in middle school. And I saw that in high school, this was something that I really wanted to pursue and that I was really interested in. And then at the same time, within science, at my school in 6th grade and middle school itself, we split it up into 3, like biology, chemistry, and physics. So I was able to take each of those classes, get a bit of a deeper understanding than usual. And I was like, I really like science. I like how all of this works. I want to explore it further. So that's where my interest kind of came from. It was more of like a natural, I found myself liking and gravitating towards certain things more than others. And then from there, I decided, let me explore this further in high school. So I kind of just, I was like, okay, I'm going to join certain clubs. For example, I'm going to join my school's DECA club. I'm going to join like certain science bees, science bowls, involve myself with more science-based organizations. Like my entire nonprofit, Art for Neuroscience, is based around that. I'll talk more about that later, but I just wanted to say like that is my journey so far. And then the college application process happened. Right now, I did commit to UC Berkeley for undeclared engineering, which means that I can select any engineering that I want as long as I have a 2.0 GPA. Currently, my plan is to dual major with electrical engineering and computer science and industrial engineering and operations research. So that's what I plan to do. I also got a few other awesome results from this application cycle, like a full merit scholarship to Vanderbilt University, which is one of the top 20 universities. So I'm glad with how all of this turned out, but anyhow, that's enough about me. So first of all, it might be confusing, like why am I hosting this webinar? Why did I see the point in kind of coming here and telling all of you guys all of this? Well, when I first started the process, it was back in like 8th or 9th grade. I kind of had no idea what was going on, right? All I knew was I need to apply to college at some point and I need to figure out exactly how to do that. So what I did was I found every free webinar offered based like that. I was focused on the college app process. I watched everything. I collected all that information and I just tried a bunch of things until I found out what's set for me. But that was a super long process. And looking back now, I think I would have done some things very differently if I had known from the start, how this process works and what exactly, are its components. I also think there's like a big misinformation epidemic. Like there are people out there saying all sorts of things about what you need to do to get into college. Like, for example, you absolutely have to do research or you need to have both music and sport. And there was all sorts of things like that that are kind of circling around. And I don't like it because the process here is super different from the process in any other countries like India. And I think that that's giving, immigrants or anyone who's not familiar with the process a lot of fear because they don't fully understand it, which leads them to do a bunch of things, try a bunch of, pay a bunch of money for all of these like counselors and organizations that isn't really necessary. So I just wanted to leave little bit of fear for people who don't know what's going on by telling you guys how this whole process works, kind of breaking it down into what you need to do and giving you an idea for how you can get started with something like that. Of course, not a lot of time for that. It's about an hour, but I'll do what I can and share like as much information as possible. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the application process. So how does this work? When you're in 12th grade, your application season is really going to start. So the application season officially ranges from about August of your 12th grade year to January of your 12th grade year. So it's those few months in the middle. There's a bunch of different like application dates and deadlines and all of that. And this isn't on the slide, so I'm just going to say it out loud. So first of all, it's kind of split up into two main categories, right? Early applications and regular applications. Early applications, like the name implies, you have to apply to early. Usually the deadlines for these are going to be around November 1st. And there's a few different categories for this. First of all, there's early action. And usually, some schools have early action. All this really means is that you can apply to the college early. The reason is sometimes it'll give you like a little boost, an acceptance rate for a college can go from like they accept 4% of students to maybe they accept like 7% in the early round. So a lot of students apply early because it also kind of gives the college the idea, okay, the student is interested enough in this college to apply early. And then you can do that and you can get an acceptance early too. And you're not like required to commit or anything. It's just something that you know early. There's also early decision, which is a little bit different. It has the same kind of deadlines, November 1st, but you can only early decision to one college. And that college, you are basically saying, I am applying to you early. If I get in, I will go. Like it's a binding contract. If you apply early decision to school X and you get in, you absolutely have to go. You cannot consider any of your other offers. And the reason people do that is because it gives them a huge boost. Like the acceptance rates can go from like 6% to 15%, for example. There are also other schools, like the super duper selective schools that have something called restricted early action, which means that you can apply early. You don't have to commit, like you can choose to go to another school, but you can't apply to any other schools early. You can apply to them in the regular round, but you can't get that boost that comes with applying to schools early. So some schools have that, like which of these they offer, early action, early decision, restrictive early action, all this completely depends on the school in question. There's also regular decision round, right? And this one, the deadlines range from January 1st to January 15th. And this is just like a normal application that you're just going to submit to all of the colleges. There are also some colleges, typically less selective colleges, although that doesn't really mean much, that offer rolling admission, which means you can apply at any time. Usually they extend like way into April or May. You can apply anytime and you get the decision within a certain time period of when you apply. For example, I think Arizona State University, that one has a rolling application period and you can apply and you can get your decision in whatever, 1 week, 2 weeks, something along those lines. There are also specific colleges that kind of are different, have different processes. For example, the UCs, which is the Universities of California, that entire system, they all have a separate applications. You submit the same application to every UC. There are 9 of them, like UC Berkeley, UCLA, UC Irvine, UC San Diego, UC Santa Barbara, UC Santa Cruz, UC Riverside, UC Merced, and I think I'm forgetting one. But that all aside, those colleges, they all have a separate application that you do, and the deadline for that is November 30th. So there are some colleges like that, UT Austin, a couple others that have different processes. Anyway, when I say different application, for the other colleges, I'm actually talking about this one common application called the Common App. What this is it's a platform where you can apply to all the colleges at once, right? When you make an account on the Common App, which you'll only do in your senior year, you can see, they'll ask you for all the information that all of these colleges need. They'll ask you for the essay that's common among all the colleges. We'll talk about essays later. And then for each college, they'll have a page where you can say, like, when you select that you want to apply to a college, it'll tell you, okay, this is the extra stuff that you need to do for this college in particular. And then you can submit it to that college. So the Common App is the application where you can do everything. Now, how does the process work? I mentioned essays, I mentioned a couple of other things. So these colleges all have something that they like to call holistic review. What this means is it's not solely based on grades or test scores. There's not like one test that you take that determines it all. And it's also not just GPA, just SAT, none of that. What they want to see is they want to see that you have done everything and kind of like engaged with every aspect. So that means that you have high grades and high test scores, but that also means that you have good extracurriculars, as in you do stuff outside of academics that's valuable. You have good relationships with your teachers and your letters of rec. You write good essays. All of this stuff comes together and they look at it as a whole to determine whether to accept a candidate or not. This doesn't mean that you need to be well-rounded. This doesn't mean that you have to play music, a musical instrument, and do a sport, and do this, and do that, and volunteer. It doesn't mean that. what colleges more often want is they want to see some kind of narrative or like a focus. Here, I'll give you an example, right? One of my close friends, her mom had a brain tumor when she was younger, and it was difficult for the family. Her mom did manage to recover, but it kind of got her interested in neuroscience, like what is going on in the brain? How did they help my mom recover? And she took that further and she studied neuroscience a lot. She also did what she could to kind of give back in a sense by raising money for neuroscience research. She's who I co-founded the nonprofit with, Art for Neuroscience. So she did what she could to raise money, to give back to neuroscience research. And, through all of that, she kind of had a narrative, right? Like it started at this brain tumor, and then it kind of, her interest kind of grew and grew. And then she did a bunch of stuff that was more related to her field of interest or her field of study. And then she applied neuroscience naturally. There are a lot of narratives like this that come up. Your narrative could even be as simple as, I was playing with Legos as a kid. I really liked it. The more I built, the more I got interested in like building models of cars out of wood or cardboard, doing things like that. Then I eventually joined a robotics team, got really into engineering, and that's the direction that I want to go. That's also a valid narrative, like an interest growing, and the point is you're focused on that interest. Whether it's your outside stuff, your academics, and any volunteering you do, all of that is focused on your one interest or a few things in particular. You really just have to like focus on certain things, not just like spread yourselves apart and do everything. But I'll talk more about like what those things could possibly be. I just wanted to make it clear that the way the US analyzes all of this stuff is very different from all other countries. They have this very specific system. Okay, so these are the components that go into it whenever a college, analyzes a student. So each one of these gets its own slide, so I'll just go over it quickly. Grades, test scores, extracurriculars, letters of recommendation, essays, and a weird category called fit, which is like whether you're right for a college or not. Give me a second, I'm going to drink a little water. All right. First of all, grades. Okay, this is what most people assume is the deciding factor. So, people will be like, if I want to get to a top college, I need to have like a 4.0 instead of a 3.9, and that'll help me. So there's a few different things that are not true about that. Like if you have a 4.0, it's definitely a good thing, but it's not going to be the deciding factor. Like it definitely is not going to be, you're not going to be automatically accepted over someone with a GPA that's like slightly lower than yours just because you have a higher grade or a higher GPA. That's not going to be the only factor that goes into it. They're going to look at everything else at the same time. So anyway, I keep saying GPA. What exactly is that? So GPA is a grade point average, and this is calculated based on what grades you have in your class. For example, if you have all A's, you'll have a 4.0 GPA, or if you have like lower grades, that GPA, usually the GPA is on a scale of 1.0 to 4.0. That's in the vast majority of cases. If you have like lower scores like B's or C's or anything like that, the GPA will go down. So it's representing where you are in terms of academics. There are certain classes like AP classes and honors classes that give you like a bonus point so they can push your GPA towards a 5.0, but that's all very specific. That's called the weighted GPA. There's also unweighted GPA, which doesn't take into account APs or honors. So essentially GPA is just a metric of how well you're doing at school, and it like analyzes your grades and puts them all together into one number. So it is obviously important to keep high. A lot of colleges say that grades, while they're not the only deciding factor, are one of the most important factors. They want to see that you're succeeding at school, that you'll be able to handle their college coursework. So you can keep it high unless you have some kind of extenuating circumstances. For example, if you had like deaths in the family or mental illness, this is kind of where the entire American system starts to differ from other ones. If you have something like that to explain any grade drops, colleges will be understanding of those things. They want to see that you are succeeding with the situation that you are in. For example, if you had to go to the hospital for a certain amount of time because you had some kind of major injury, they'll understand that, and they won't expect, if you have like some drop in grades, they'll be like, okay, this makes sense in the context, But if you don't have those extenuating circumstances, and if you're in a normal situation, it is important to keep it high. When I say high, I don't mean you have to have straight A's, 4.0 GPA. That's all well and good. And if you are capable of that, you should go for it. But if you end up with like a 3.95 or 3.9 or even a 3.8, all of that is kind of in the top range. And colleges won't mind that much. Like, it doesn't need to be perfect 100% all the time, right? Some fluctuations are completely fine. If it goes a little bit under, like 3.95, maybe you'll get a couple of B's. That's all. It's not going to harm your chances at all, as long as the rest of your application is strong. And having a 4.0, if the rest of your application is weak, it's not going to do you any favors. So GPA is not like everything, and as long as you keep it generally high, you should be fine. This is actually where some other concept that colleges really care about comes in, and that concept is called rigor. So imagine, student A, 4.0 student, right? They're taking classes like, for example, they're taking pre-algebra, they're taking, history 10, they're taking physics 10, like the lower level kind of classes, right? Because they have options to take, for example, honors physics, AP physics, or honors, AP US history, or then AP, US history, things like that. But they're not choosing to do that. They're choosing to take the lower level classes because they think that they can do better in them. That's fine. And now they have high grades, but they're not going to be viewed as favorably as the student who chooses to take the honors classes, the AP classes, which are advanced classes essentially, who chooses to move higher up, like chooses to take calculus instead of pre-algebra, chooses harder classes, even if they have like slightly worse grades, for example, like a B plus, as opposed to the other student having like an A plus, right? Since they chose to challenge themselves to take like college level content, to go higher with a rigor, colleges are going to view that incredibly favorably. So in those cases, worse scores are basically a worse score in a more advanced class is most likely better than a good score in a lower level class. That's how colleges tend to view it. So when you have an opportunity in your curriculum to challenge yourself, you should take it. You should try to advance as far as possible, as far as makes sense for your interests and for your abilities. Don't think I need to keep this GPA up, so let me take the easiest classes. And the last bit is actually comparison. So a lot of schools have a lot of different grading policies. Like, some of them might be grade inflating. For example, they might be, giving students A's very easily, making their classes incredibly easy, giving them lots of support. Whereas other schools might be a lot more difficult. It might be a lot harder to get an A in the same classes, in which case the students in the second school, their GPAs are going to be worse. Does that mean they're worse off compared to the first school? No. Your GPA is compared against your context. So it's compared against others at your high school. A 4.0 where half the class has a 4.0 is not the same as a 4.0 when that's the very top grade in your school, right? For example, my school, we're not very great about avoiding grade inflation. So I think like a third of my class has a 4.0, which means it's not as valuable as it would be if you were coming from a situation where it's like a super duper competitive school and like the average GPA is like a 3.0 and you have worked like super duper hard to get to that 4.0 part, then that 4.0 is worth more. Or it's looked at in the context of what does your school offer. Also, advanced classes like honors, APs, all of that. It's always good to go as far as you can, but some schools just straight up don't have them. Some schools don't have AP classes. Some schools offer less. There's all sorts of variations within schools. And colleges will pay attention to that. For example, if your school doesn't have AP calculus, if they only go to pre-calculus, they won't expect you to have taken AP calculus. They'll expect you to go as far as you can based on what your school offers. They won't, compare you to some random like super insane school with something like 40 APs that they're offering students if your school doesn't offer any. So it's all in context. So do the best you can with what resources you have. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about test scores, right? And when I talk about test scores, I'm referring to SAT and ACT scores. So first of all, what are they? They are standardized tests. So we just talked about how GPA can vary so widely between schools, right? Some schools it's easier to get straight A's to do well. Test scores are standardized. So everyone across the nation takes the same test at the same difficulty in some sense. Well, the SAT is one test, the ACT is another test, but colleges know how to compare them. So this, for example, just talking about the SAT alone, standardized across the nation, everyone is taking the same difficulty test. So you can really tell, how well a student is doing. Like if a student gets a lower score in the SAT compared to another with the same GPA, you know that other student is more like college prepared, for example. So that's the use of these kind of test scores in colleges. It's like a objective differentiator of students. Now, I don't know if you guys have noticed, like paid attention to the news, but recently a lot of colleges have been, saying they're getting rid of the SAT or the ACT or offering it as test optional. A lot of the top colleges, many of the Ivies, all of these schools have done that. Like since COVID year, they've been doing that. And what this means is you can choose whether to submit your test score or not. They mainly made this change because a lot of students were struggling to find a place to take the test during the pandemic, and all the reasons aren't important. But recently they've been bringing it back, and the reason for that isn't too important either. Like I have a lot of thoughts, but I don't think I have time to share them. Anyway, the test, a lot of people have been asking if these schools are making it test optional, like you can choose whether or not to submit the test. Is it still important? Well, yes, for two reasons. First of all, colleges are leaning towards bringing it back. Like I think Harvard, Caltech, a lot of other top schools have been saying, okay, we are requiring test scores now. So that's something that's been happening. But even without that, even assuming a test optional landscape, it still helps you. If you submit no test and the colleges see there's no test score, they're not going to penalize you. They're not going to say we don't want this person because they don't have a test. Instead, what they're going to do is they're going to weight the rest of your application heavily. So if you don't have a test score, you can still be accepted if you have, for example, amazing extracurriculars, or if you have a grade that really stands out from the rest of your school, or anything along those lines. But if you have the ability to do well on the test, if you have the ability to take the test and get a decently high score, then it's always better for you to do that and to submit the test, because that takes some of the pressure off the rest of the application. For example, if they have concerns about how legitimate your grades are because of something that your school did, they can see your test score and be like, okay, this person is fine, they'll do great at our school. You have that kind of support for the rest of your application in a sense. So strongly suggest taking the test, especially if you can do well on it. If not, you can study, you could always get your scores up. Anyway, like I said, it helps by objectively proving that you know content and you're ready to go to college. Like it doesn't matter what your school taught. If you show that you got a good grade on the SAT, they know that you know like what's going on. As for the content, what exactly that is, on this SAT, they only test stuff that you learned in high school because it's administered to all high schoolers. They're not going to go like super advanced calculus or anything that you're unlikely to know. It's all basic things like algebra, right? And then like reading and writing tests. It's made up of the SAT particularly. I don't know too much about the ACT, so I didn't take that. But the SAT in particular is made up of 3 parts, right? It has like a reading part, a writing part, and then a math part. And this is all high school level. And since, I mean, wherever you guys live, like it depends on where you live, but in your area, your high schools, you may even be like more advanced than the norm. So in that case, it'll be like a decently easy content. You just need to brush up on it. It's not something that you need to learn, that you need to intensely study for. Anyway, in terms of scores, as for what is good, anything, the SAT isn't graded based on like if you got one score 10 points more than the other person, that means that you are automatically better. Colleges don't want to do that. So what they do instead is they kind of do score bars. So they view it in terms of these few scores are like top scores. These few scores are the next level down. They're slightly worse, but not all that bad, not all that much worse, right? And then they keep going like that. For example, your score bar for a college could be 50 points. The SAT is scored from 400 to 1600, right? So they may be like, if you got a 1550 to 1600, all of that is a very top range. So you don't need to, what I'm saying is, you don't need to take the SAT over and over and like study for it super hard until you get a top 1600. Just like a top score or anything like that will get you into that range. It's not something that you absolutely need to nail or get perfect. Just letting you guys know, in case you didn't know, you can take the SAT again and again as many times as possible, but there's only about one administration or one like session every month. So you need to sign up for those in advance, then prep for them, then go to them and take them. You practically speaking, like you do have like as many tries as you want. I think the average, or not the average student, but I know a lot of people who kind of just take it twice, right? Twice is probably a good benchmark to aim at. Anyway, as I'm saying, the SAT, it goes in like score bars, like sets of scores that are all viewed as the same. 1550, 1600, same thing. What the bars are depends on the college. Like they can be like 40, but some schools even are like 1500 plus. I don't care. It's all the same to me. Like all of it, if you're making silly mistakes, that doesn't really matter. Clearly, you know what the content is if you have a score that high. Colloquially, 1500 plus is very good. Anyway, again, you are always, when it comes to these things, compared to your classmates in your context. Like at my school, everyone gets high grades. Like our average SAT is like a 1480 out of 1600, which is very, very high, just saying, compared to like almost every other school. So me getting a super high score isn't as like different because everyone else at my school was getting the similar kinds of scores, is getting like similarly high scores. Whereas if your school's average is something like 1,000, if you have like a 1540 or even a 1450, colleges may see that and be like, okay, wow, your score is very much above the average. So clearly you are an exceptional student in your context and like relative to what resources you have available to you. 1 second. All right. How can you succeed at the SAT? There are all sorts of organizations out there like SAT prep orgs or a bunch of stuff like that that claim that they can push your SAT point up by a certain amount. Now, this may be true. They may be pushing those grades up, but all they really do is they give you a bunch of SAT problems, like the exact type of problems that show up on the SAT. They make you practice them again and again and again. And the more you do them, the more familiar you get with the kind of question that's on the SAT. Yeah, the SAT, since it's standardized, right? Also, everything I'm saying also applies to the ACT. The grading score is a little different, but other than that, everything I'm saying also applies to the ACT if you choose to take that. Now, when it comes to these exams, right? They have to be standardized. They have to compare everyone, and they do like multiple different tests in multiple different months, right? So they have to have a certain structure to these tests to make sure they compare accurately. And you can easily understand that structure. They have a certain set of questions. For example, in reading, they always start by asking, what is the main idea of this passage? And then they'll ask some questions about vocabulary. They'll ask some questions about, anything else, like understand this particular sentence, all sorts of things like that, right? So what these prep organizations do is they just take a look. They're like, these are the kinds of questions that show up, and they have you practice those type of questions specifically so that then you can succeed at the exam because you've seen that kind of question before and you know how to answer it. But you don't need super expensive prep works for that. All you need is to do the 8 SAT practice tests at the College Board, which is the organization that administers the SAT, to do the practice test that they've set out, and you'll get familiar with the kind of questions that they'll be asking. That's all you need to do. And then you can also do Khan Academy practice. These are the two that I suggest, the official SAT practice test and Khan Academy practice, because nothing else, no other platforms really provide that same kind of structure for the question. Practically speaking, all you need is to take that, those 8 practice tests, to do those Khan Academy questions. You don't even need that much practice, and you should be set for the exam. Just get yourself familiar with the kind of questions that the SAT is asking, less than the content, because the content you should know as part of your high school curriculum. How you study for the SAT is you study the kinds of questions that show up on the SAT. Same thing for the ACT, all of that, all that applies just the exact same. It's just important to understand how the SAT itself works when you want to study for these. And the best way to do that is by practicing using past SAT material. Okay. Extracurriculars, this is the big one. This is where students can stand out. There are probably a million kids, or not a million kids, but there are probably many, many kids across the United States who have a 4.0 or the top possible GPA, who have the top possible SAT score. And if colleges were solely looking at those things, they'd have so many people to accept. So what they do instead is they also look at extracurriculars. Extracurriculars are anything that you do in school or out of school, outside of academics, so activities that you engage in a sense. What is recommended for these extracurriculars, or what every college will tell you, is that they should be something that you're passionate about. Quote unquote passion projects, right? If you are particularly interested in not coding, if you're particularly interested in building Legos, then maybe joining a robotics team is the route for you. If you're particularly interested in music, then maybe you get further into that, learn it, do competitions, all sorts of stuff like that. Whatever you're interested in, following that and doing something with it is what they really want you to do as an extracurricular. Now you can't just do anything. Like just playing video games isn't going to be as like a valuable extracurricular. What you really need to do is you need to follow your interest. You need to find something that you can do to make some kind of measurable, tangible impact, and you need to do it. For example, winning a competition is a tangible impact. Having a certain number of views on YouTube, maybe if you stream a video game and you get very popular, that's a measurable impact. Donating a certain amount of money, like with your nonprofit, that's a measurable impact. So that's what you want to do, because when it comes to these applications for college, they'll give you a certain like page where you can put in all your activities. And on that page, they'll have like, you'll put in your name of your activity, you'll put in how many hours you spent on it, and you'll have 150 characters to describe it. 150 characters is not a lot. It's one sentence, maybe two. So within that, you need to describe your entire extracurricular, what you did. So having these kinds of numbers makes it a lot easier. Like on mine for Art for Neuroscience, I said we had an over 40-person team and we raised over $5,000 for neuroscience research. You see those numbers I'm putting in there? I had some kind of measurable, tangible impact, and that's easy to kind of transfer into my applications. Now, there's a few different kinds of passion projects that are very, very common that a lot of students do, and I'm just going to list them here. First one is nonprofits, and this one is actually very interesting because there's often like in communities that are focused on like college applications, there's often like a joke, right? That there's one extracurricular that like everyone is doing at a certain point in time because they think college is like it. Like it used to be writing a book. And then it continued on to like starting nonprofits. And now I think it's transitioning into like doing research. But like nonprofits are very common. A lot of students end up like, starting them because they think they have like a small interest in something and they want to like do something for the community, or even within that, like they may even start it because, you know what, I want to do it for college apps. That may even be their only reason, right? But with a nonprofit, it's not always a bad thing if you start one. Like it's not going to be like colleges are kind of catching on to the fact that a lot of people start nonprofits to get into college and they don't like, they're not a big fan of all of that. They can usually tell like this nonprofit is kind of just like, they're kind of just doing something. They don't really care. They're not really making a change. Nonprofits aren't all bad though. The difference between a bad nonprofit and a good nonprofit is what you actually achieve with it. Like there are nonprofits out there started by high schoolers that just post things on social media and say like, we have impacted X number of people, but it's just like how many people like their posts or how many people follow their accounts. No, obviously that's not like, it's slightly better than nothing, but that isn't meaningful. Whereas if you're doing something else, like my friend and I chose to focus on raising money because we thought that would be the most helpful for research. And we organized like these elaborate events and we were able to raise $5,000. So when you are actually doing something that gets some kind of results like money, or if you're doing like a camp and you have like a certain number of kids that are involved with that, like my team, for example, like 40 plus kids on 40 plus high schoolers on it, things like that can really show that like your nonprofit is actually meaningful, you're actually doing work and making change and like having an impact, so that's where kind of a good nonprofit stands out from a bad nonprofit, right? When you're actually able to do something. But of course, do not start a nonprofit if you don't care about what you're starting it about. And this is like, it makes sense. I do not do anything unless you care about it. And it's not just because, follow your passion. It's because if you don't care about something, if you don't care about whatever you're doing, you're not going to put as much effort into it. And if you don't put as much effort into it, it's not going to have as much success and it's not going to be as powerful of a message for your applications. You're much better off doing something that you care about so that you can dedicate time to it, dedicate efforts, and actually achieve something that's bigger and more meaningful. There's always something that you can find related to your interests. Like if you're interested in, I had a kid I was talking to earlier who was interested in music production. He could produce some songs. He could do all sorts of stuff. He could post on YouTube or get involved with some music communities. There's so much you can do with that. So many places you can take that. Anyway, back to the other common extracurriculars. Another one that's super popular is research, which is kids who are interested in science or engineering or math will kind of, find a way to involve themselves with scientific research, right? This is interesting because usually research is like a years long pursuit. So these students kind of, what happens a lot of times with research is they kind of go into the lab for like a summer, they do menial jobs like cleaning test tubes and all that, and then they get their name put on a paper as like the 13th author or something very low down on the paper, which means that they didn't actually contribute that much. But then they put it into their applications as research that they actually did. And again, colleges are catching on to this because it's very hard to do meaningful research as a high schooler in the limited time frame you are afforded. It's like a full-time job. It's a very long, years-long pursuit. You can't really do meaningful research. And there are also a bunch of organizations out there that are like pay to play. You give them money, they'll put your name on the research paper, or they'll help you do some kind of research that's basically just these kinds of menial tasks, all for like a super big fee, like whatever, $6,000, something ridiculous like that. But there are also students who do meaningful research. They reach out to professors, they kind of cold email them. This is a valuable way of getting a research position. You cold email professors, you tell them, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. Are you looking for any support in the lab or in whatever, project that you're working on? And maybe 1 in 200 times you'll get lucky with that. You'll find a professor willing to work with you. You can team up with them and actually make a real contribution to whatever research they're doing. It's a toss up. You may or may not get like a research paper out of it, but it's definitely something that you can pursue. You just shouldn't go for all these like pay to play organizations, or you shouldn't do something like kind of disguise or obfuscate what exactly you actually did on the project and make it seem bigger than what it was on your apps. There's also volunteering. So this one is interesting because at some point, every single student I've heard, like they've heard something from their parents or from their counselors or something. Yeah, go to the local library or go to the local hospital and volunteer like 20 hours, and then you can put that on your apps. It's useless. If you're volunteering 20 hours for something, that's not a big enough commitment or big enough time period for you to meaningfully put anything on your applications related to that. If you want to do volunteering, it has to be one of your big focuses. Like me, if I had done 20 hours, I wouldn't have put it on there. It wouldn't have been that meaningful. I did 650 hours of volunteering. That goes from some random thing that you're doing just because your parent, told you to do it, to something that you're doing because you cared about it, to something that you've dedicated a lot of time to something that clearly shows colleges, this person is interested in these kind of things, interested in activism, interested in giving back, and they'll be able to bring that to our college campus, right? So by doing it so much, I was kind of able to turn it from something that's not that meaningful to something that is meaningful because I just dedicated a lot of time and I had a big impact in a sense. So many hours, that's a big impact. Also with volunteering, it doesn't really matter too much how long you volunteer. What matters is what you do. So with all these organizations that I volunteered with, I kind of, was able to build up to leadership roles for some, for example. I headed up projects. I did things like that I also wrote about. I was like, I cared about furthering education for students. So I did this as a tutor. And then from a tutor, I was slowly able to build up to some other positions within the organization and help more and more kids. Things like that, where you show not only that you volunteered, but also what you did as a volunteer. That can also help. 1 second. All right, next, work and internships. So first I'm going to talk about the internship aspect of this, right? A lot of people go for these usually over the summer, their junior year. I will just tell you, if you are a high schooler, you're not going to get a paid internship. I have one friend, she's like an anomaly. She got a paid internship and she didn't like expect it. She was offering to do the work for free and the company that she was working with just said that they'd pay her. So if you want an internship, you're probably going to look for an unpaid one. And smaller organizations, especially nonprofits, are very eager to help out high schoolers in this way. Like if you just reach out to them, they'll allow you to work with them and you can gain experiences in that way. So that's something that's super useful. Another thing that people also do in the name of internships is summer programs. Now, just like everything else, there are good summer programs, there are bad summer programs. The good summer programs are programs like the Research Science Institute. There are so many rankings you can find online of summer programs that you can do. There are certain ones. These are often either free or they even give you a stipend to attend, oftentimes. Not in all cases. Like there's one called the Summer Science Program, that's great, it's 10K. But usually these ones are like on the cheaper end, right? And they really offer students good experiences. Like in RSI, you have an opportunity to actually research a topic of your own, like actual research, not whatever pay to play is. There's so many of these. The problem with these good ones is they're insanely competitive. So you got to apply to a bunch and then see if you get lucky. Like I applied to Bank of America Student Leaders. I didn't actually get in. But I also did a summer program that was Cosmos, which is one for California. And that one it's pretty good. It does cost a decent amount, but it is like one of the top ones, about a 15% acceptance rate. And I did nanochemistry and nanotechnology there. So it was like a 4-week kind of research and learning experience. I didn't get to do any novel research, but I got to like dive deep into a science topic. So that's a good one to consider too. There are other programs that are not so good. These are what we call pay to play. So they'll charge exorbitant amounts. Like you're talking $10,000 for 2 weeks, and it could even be online. They'll charge these amounts and parents will buy it because they think it's some kind of benefit. A lot of times schools will do this, but it's not really associated with the school. Like for example, you have some program that says it's associated with Princeton, but it's not actually Princeton. It's another organization renting out the Princeton campus. And they'll use that kind of name brand association to charge ridiculous amounts for a program that doesn't actually give you much value. And it also doesn't stand out because it's not that selective and you don't get the opportunity to do many things there. So there are a bunch of programs like that. One that's interesting to me is a bunch of the UPenn summer programs. They're all 10K for 2 weeks. And the only thing they really achieve in terms of college apps is giving you a boost for acceptance to the University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy. So if you really want to go there, then you can do these programs. But if you don't want to, if you have other options that you think are more interesting, then it's completely pointless because these 10K for 2-week programs don't even teach you that much, practically speaking. And then the other thing is work, right? If you don't want to find any of these things, internships or summer programs, you can always work. And whatever you do doesn't necessarily need to be linked to whatever your theme is. Like I did 2 jobs last summer. I was a camp counselor and I was a swim instructor, and I was able to earn money. Colleges love this. They love to see that kids are being responsible. They love to see that they're, kind of earning money to support their family, all of that. Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about was sports and musical instruments, okay? So these are the ones that I heard at the very beginning of this process, 8th grade or something. I kept hearing, you need to do a sport or need to play an instrument. It's a necessity. It's not. It's absolutely not a necessity, right? Sports, unless you are a very competitive player and you want to be recruited by colleges to play on their teams, it is not a good use of your time. Like it'll go 3 hours a day to practice, right? And if you're not going to be recruited, colleges don't care all that much because they already have their recruited sports people. They want to build a well-rounded class that has all sorts of interests and skills. And if they already have their sports teams, why would they need another sports person who they haven't recruited? Sports is not something that's meaningful to pursue unless you're really being recruited or you really like it. Those are the only situations I'd put that in. And then musical instruments. Musical instruments are fine. You can compete, you can get to the top. Problem is, there are certain instruments like the piano. Like, think about it. Do you play the piano? Well, I'm confident that if there's like 300 people, I'm confident that at least 200 of those 300 people in this call play the piano. It's very common among Asian communities and Indian communities in particular. Since so many people play the piano, it's going to be very, very hard to make it up to any kind of significant competitive success unless you dedicate hours and hours. I have a friend who's good enough to play at Carnegie Hall. You're competing against people like her. She started playing piano when she was 3, and she practices for hours every day. Unless you're willing to give that kind of commitment to one musical instrument, it's not really worth doing something common like the piano, violin, the guitar, anything like that. There are other instruments that you can play, like less common ones that may help you stand out more. Like the sitar is one that I often see on like online college app things. Like something unique like that may not be as popular will help you stand out because colleges may not have anyone with that instrument. So they'll be curious in inviting those kinds of people to join their community as well, having more, difference or variation. I'll talk more about that, like why they want people who are all different later on. But anyway, the last bit is There are some usual extracurriculars that everyone does because they think they're useful, like piano, National Honor Society. Everyone does that. It does not help you at all, right? Things like that, that everyone does. They're just not going to be that useful. What colleges want is they want unique extracurriculars. They want things that other people aren't doing. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get people who can do all sorts of different things in. So if you do something that's significantly different from everyone else around you, then you're more likely to be accepted. Okay, letters of recommendation. You know how I mentioned grade inflation, right? At my school, a third of our class has a 4.0. So how can colleges ever know who is actually a good student and who isn't in class? Letters of recommendation. What these are is they're like a little write-up that people can write about a specific student saying, you know, they're good in class. These are their skills. These are their talents. This is why I'd recommend them as a candidate for this college. The majority of schools, there's a few exceptions, again, like UCs, UIUC, there's a bunch of schools in particular that don't accept these, but the majority of schools ask for letters of recommendation. They'll ask for 2 from your teachers. They'll ask for 1 from a STEM subject teacher, science, technology, engineering, or math, and 1 from a humanities teacher, which is English, history, any social sciences. Now, these 2 recommendations, they should not necessarily come from the class where you have the best grade, because what these focus on is anecdotes, stories from your experience in class, what the teachers did with you, how they saw you as a student. So if you came in there and you were struggling with the class, but you worked to improve, and you went from like a C to an A or a B to an A, that may be a better teacher to ask for this rec because you've clearly worked with them and they've seen your progress and your improvement and they can speak to those skills. Whereas if you're just an A student in the class, you never really needed to go to the teacher and ask them for help. You were just kind of cruising. The teacher can say, yeah, they're a good student, but they don't really, practically speaking, know anything about you to write about in that letter, right? So it should be a class where you're engaging a lot, where you're interested in the course material, or where you've done like an impressive turnaround of your grade, where you've achieved a lot in that class. That's what you're looking at when you want these letters of rec. Usually to request these, it's either going to be at the end of 11th grade or the beginning of 12th grade. So you'll let your teacher know, and they'll either write them over the summer or kind of in the very beginning, those few months, August, September, maybe October, before you have to start submitting your apps. There's also a counselor letter of rec. In 12th grade, schools will often assign you a college counselor, right? And whether your counselor's letter of recommendation is absolutely required for all schools that ask for letters of rec, whether it's good or not depends on your school size. Like there could be schools where they have 1 counselor per 200 students, where naturally this counselor isn't going to be able to say much. Colleges understand this. They understand that oftentimes these counselors have a lot of students to deal with, so they don't care all that much about the counselor letter of rec. That's mostly to inform them of like extenuating circumstances, like if your grades have dropped because you were in hospital for the majority of 10th grade. You can tell your counselor that, and your counselor can back up your story. Just confirm to the college, yes, that is what happened. You should trust the student's excuse for the reason that they didn't get a good grade. That's usually what that kind of letter is about. It's not that important. And then beyond these teachers' recs, these and the counselor rec, those are usually the required ones. Some colleges offer you the option to add additional ones, like outside recs or recs from more teachers. You could ask mentors from your like research, your volunteering, your internship, or your boss at work, anything like that. You can ask anyone who's interacted with you in any specific capacity. But these extra letters, these admissions officers who are reading these applications, they have like 7 minutes for each one. They're frazzled, they're harried, they don't want extra work. So unless your extra letter adds something of incredible value to your app, like it's someone who's completely different from school, like your boss at work, where you're like able to interact with kids well or something, as opposed to your teachers where they can speak to your academic prowess, unless it's something so specific and different from your normal letters like that, it's not worth annoying your admissions officer with the extra content, because the more they have to read, the more annoyed they get, and they won't like be too happy if they have another outside recommendation to consider that doesn't add anything of value to your application. That's something that you always kind of have to balance, right? Like, is adding more information too annoying to my admissions officers, right? That is something that a lot of people don't consider. But these guys they have minimal time to read these. They're kind of stressed out and all of that, and you don't want to add to that stress because that makes them less likely to accept you. There's a person on the other side of the screen, basically. You have to remember that. All right, essays. These are what a lot of people kind of forget about when they do all of this. So essays are what you're going to be writing with your application, right? These go with your application. And there's two main types, personal statement and supplementals. These essays just really allow, colleges to understand who you are, what your personality is like, all of that. So first of all, they have all of this is going to be written in that time period, right? I told you August to January, you have to submit apps. What do you do then? You write these essays. So first of all, you have a personal statement, right? And this is going to be one big essay, 650-word essay that every college wants. This is something from your life, whether it's like a story or an event or like personal development that you've gone through, something along those lines. You could tell the story of when, my mom got a brain tumor. I eventually got interested in neuroscience, and then, now I'm here and I want to major in it. Or you could tell any story, really. You could tell the story of a specific moment. My personal statement was about a situation that happened to me when I was in like 4th grade, where I was constantly getting bullied. So I tried to combat it by, I'd saying hi to that person every day and just kind of like regaining control of the situation. So things like that, anything, any story, any meaningful event from your life. What you're really trying to do here is show who you are, because there's a person on the other side of the screen. So you want to show your personality, go from words on a page to someone who the admissions officers can connect to, can empathize with, can value, can see on in their community, show personality, show who you are. Which is why it probably shouldn't be about extracurriculars or anything academic. Like saying I have a 1600 SAT in your essay is just going to make your admissions officer think, well, this person is boring. Do they have nothing interesting about them except for a test score? No, you want to talk about yourself and show your personality. This is your only opportunity to show them who you are, which is also why it's by nature very open-ended. They have like 6 prompts for this, like a challenge in your life, or talk about a moment that was inspiring, or talk about a person that was inspiring. And the last prompt is even talk about anything else that you want. It's up to you what you want to write in this. It's about you. It's about showing who you are. Supplementals are a lot more regimented in a way. There are specific, these are specific to college. One second. Supplementals are specific to college. So each college is going to ask for different essays. It can vary heavily. Like Vanderbilt asked for 1, whereas UT Austin asked me for something like 9. So it really depends on the college, right? So first of all, one essay that a lot of colleges ask for is the Why Us essay. Why do they ask for this? Well, it's in their best interests. Look, if they accept a student and they don't know that that student is really interested in their school, odds are the student probably isn't going to go to that school. If the student doesn't go to that school, that decreases a statistic that these colleges have called their yield rate, which is how many people actually end up going to their school out of the number accepted. If this yield rate goes down, it decreases their overall rankings, which they absolutely do not want, because a lot of people heavily value those rankings to decide what colleges they should go to or which ones are valuable. So they ask these Why Us essays to make sure that the students that they're accepting really have done their research and aren't just randomly applying to the college, that they want to go to the school. So for the Why Us essays, you got to pack it with specific details. It's not enough to say something along the lines of, oh yeah, this college, it's great, I learn a lot here. No, you got to say why that school specifically, specific professors you want to work with, specific clubs you want to join, all sorts of details that show that you have at least looked online a little bit and been like, what does this college have available to me? Which shows that you at least have a cursory interest in the college instead of just like giving up knowing that there was extra essays to do. This is what colleges want to see from this, that you cared enough to at least look something up. There are also often essays about specific extracurriculars. Like I said earlier, your activities list, you have 150 characters, 1 or 2 sentences to describe every activity. When they ask you these essays, these are the opportunities to elaborate on extracurriculars that you hadn't had the chance to beforehand. If there's a volunteering gig that you did that you really liked, or you want to talk about the research that you did to prove that, you are an active hand and a helping hand in doing that, making that happen. This essay is your opportunity. It'll be like any range of words, like sometimes it can be 150 words. Sometimes it can be 500 words. How much a college asks really depends on that. Now, the diversity essay is a new one that a lot of colleges are bringing in. I don't know if you guys are following, but recently the Supreme Court, struck down affirmative action, which means that colleges can no longer consider race in their applications. In past times, they did this because they wanted to have like a diverse class. So they take that into account and be like, how can we make this class more diverse? Like, how can we represent a variety of different opinions? For Asian students, Indian students in particular, because I'm assuming most of the people here are Indian, it was mostly not a boost. It could even be harmful at times because there were a lot of Indian students applying for not as much proportion of like the entire class, right? But now that race has been struck down, colleges no longer have that ability to make a diverse class. So they ask for a diversity essay, asking about like what communities are you a part of and how have they shaped you? A lot of students choose to talk about race, but if you are in a situation where you don't have to do that, and usually the suggestion is you don't do that because it won't really do you any favors. What you could instead talk about is any other community. For example, like clubs at school are a community and they represent diversity of thought. Personally, I talked a lot in my essays about how I followed my South Asian heritage, like by teaching at a Tamil class and by, learning what the festivals are, how to make food, all of that, just involving myself in this, learning to talk to my grandmother, all of that stuff. Usually, these kind of supplemental essays are less open-ended. Like they have something that they're asking you about and they want you to answer it. There's a lot of these, like Caltech, which is a very STEM focused school, asks you for 2 experiences that you had related to STEM. It really varies by college. And finally, the last concept, school fit. Now, this is what no one realizes is a big deal. I didn't realize it was a big deal until this year. And I saw everyone getting in. And I was like, why is that person getting in over this person? It seems like this person is more qualified. It's so random. This represents the randomness, school fit. So what exactly is that? It's whether you fit whatever that college or that admissions officer is looking for at that time. I'll give you an example. Maybe there's a band at the school, like a super popular marching band, and their only tuba player is a senior. They're going to be graduating next year. So the school needs a new tuba player. So sorry. They'll look into their student pool and they'll look at everyone who's available and they'll find the tuba players. And even if another student is more qualified than the tuba player, even if they have better, more impactful extracurriculars, the tuba player will be selected over them. When it comes to this, it seems like, okay, but how can I know to play tuba just because that senior is going to be graduating? You can't. You have no control over this part of it. This is where like everyone thinks the entire college application process is pure merit. It's not. It's what the school wants, and you just being better is not going to guarantee any kind of acceptance. All these college counselors say we can make the change to guarantee acceptance. Acceptance is never guaranteed no matter how good you are, because there are little factors like this that can trip people up. Like it doesn't make sense. Some people get into Berkeley but not any of the lesser UCs, maybe because Berkeley was looking for whatever they had at that time. The process is not pure merit, which is why ascribing so much like value to it, like thinking that it defines who you are, is such a bad idea, right? Like it just doesn't, like, you can't control any of these things, which is the only thing that you can really do is make sure that the extracurriculars you're doing are a bit rarer. Like if they're looking for a piano player, there are millions of kids that they can pick from for a piano player, and they'll probably pick the piano player who's more accomplished than you are, right? But if they're looking for like a sitar player, or they're looking for a unique instrument player, or they see you and they're like, that's a unique instrument, we could use one of those kids on our campus. Having that unique extracurricular, stands out completely from everyone else around you. And they can be like, you know what? We need a star player, and this is the only person that's available, so we will accept them, as opposed to more competition when you are playing something like the piano. So the only thing that you can do is make your extracurriculars a little more unique. But there's only so many combinations. I wouldn't go so far to think, okay, how can I game this aspect, because it's ungameable by nature. That's the thing with the US college application process. The fit is always going to be a factor that you cannot control for. So all you can really do is just know that if you don't get into a top college too, it's not your fault. Like there's no like, I could have done this better, whatever. I had me personally, I had the top stats and I got rejected from whatever, like Stanford, for example, right? It's not because of me. It's because Stanford wanted a student that was not what I had. You know, they already had many students who did a lot of volunteering, for example. And instead, they decided to go the route of a student who did research. It's not me because I was as qualified as I could be. It's not you, even if you don't get in anywhere. That's something that's important to remember. Even if you don't get into top schools, it's not on you. It's not your fault. And if you don't get into top schools, this nation has 3,000 colleges. And we keep saying like the top 20, like all the Ivies and all those good colleges, and being like, these are the ones that we have to go to, you know? You can be successful at any school. The CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, he went to Oregon State University as an undergrad. Every CEO, every business person that you can see, none of them went to any known undergrads. They all just went to Ivies for grad school. All of them went to like state colleges or like some obscure university in the middle of nowhere. Every kind of school, you don't need to go to a top school to be successful. Everything will bring you success. So I kind of wanted to just say that because there's so much that you can do to get into college, but in the end, getting into college isn't a big deal. Like it's just one portion of your life, and you will always be able to find the path. If you're motivated enough to work towards these colleges, you are motivated enough to succeed anywhere you go. I just wanted to tell you guys that. Anyway, quick timeline. I'll get through this quick because I know we're running out of time. In elementary school, please never, ever, ever make your elementary schoolers think about college. It's not, it's too early. It's too early. You can get an idea for like what your kids' interests are so that you can kind of explore it, put them in a class for whatever instrument or whatever they want to do if they're particularly interested in that. Help them find what they want to do. Then in middle school, same thing. Don't think about college apps yet, but find your interest, continue doing that, and also get involved with your community. Do things like, you know, give speeches, maybe run for your middle school's like student government, do things like that. Volunteer occasionally, things like that that just show you, you know, these are the places in my community I can get involved. This is how I establish a presence. So you don't just get thrown into high school and be expected to do all these extracurriculars and be unfamiliar. Then in lower high school, start focusing down. Find an interest, find a few interests, start focusing on them. Make everything focused on that. Think, okay, what else can I do to explore this and make an impact at the same time? Then in upper high school, it's, you know, crunch time. You want to take your standardized tests. You want to, in 12th grade, you want to write all of your essays, get all of that ready. Make sure you set yourself up for this in lower high school, so that when you get to 11th and 12th grade, you're not like panicking. You're like, I need to do the SAT, and I need to get my extracurriculars, and I need to do these competitions and an internship, and I need to do my college apps. You don't want to put yourself in that position. So start a little bit early. Start thinking about, this is the stuff that I want to pursue. This is what I want to explore. Do it in lower high school so you are set for upper high school. But again, elementary and middle, do not start thinking about college apps. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy your childhood. It's the only one you get. Okay, these are my contacts. I will just stay on this. The next page is this question, so I'm just going to stay on this page. This is my personal website. It also has my resume. I strongly suggest checking it out. Has all of the information, everything that I did on it. Just maya.sridham.page. So you can just type that into a browser. And, you know, if you look on the top bar, it has a bunch of my tabs. It has things like, it has my extracurriculars, my activities, my awards, all of that stuff, a little bit of details, other speeches I've given. So definitely check out my website. I highly suggest that, recommend that. If you want ideas for what to do for your extracurriculars, that's a good place to go. You know, anything that you're looking for in that sense. And then it also has my email and my LinkedIn. So if you want to contact me personally, that is something that I'm definitely open to. Send me an email. I will get back to you for sure. Send me a LinkedIn connection request. I will, you know, we can have a conversation there. All of that I'm available to do. And anyway, I'm going to wrap it up there because I've already gone a bit over time. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, we will get to that, Maya. Once I want you to take a short breath and then drink water or relax. And there's so much of information you put in here. So I would recommend all the audience to actually go through this recording and then revamp yourself slow at your own pace to figure out what she's stressing on and all those things. And in addition to the link, we will also send you the link for this presentation. So you have our contact information, all these PowerPoint slides with you when you want to pursue further with her. And so in the meantime, I'm going to invite a couple of our national team members. They would wanted to talk to you about some programs for the high schoolers we are trying to put together. And here I welcome Mr. Narayana Jenga, who is a coaching czar of North-South Foundation, and also Dr. Priya Krishnan. She's here, right? So are you going to present something, Narayana?
Yeah, I'm actually going to, I think this actually ties into Maya's talk very much, and I have been answering
Or
questions.
I
So
will
in case
make
any,
you
yeah,
yeah, I will make presenter. Let me see.
yeah, I'm just going to walk them through our website.
I'll
We have,
stop sharing the
Okay.
screen. You can just drop my contact info in the chat if possible.
Okay.
okay, so let me share. How do I,
Wait, one minute.
sharing, show screen.
Yeah. Did you get it or no? No. I think me.
It's not allowing me
No.
to click on show
Yeah, yeah.
screen.
Hold on 1 second. I had to go in yours.
Okay,
Okay, now should be able to do it.
yeah, got it. Show
Okay.
screen. Okay, so this is, I am on the North-South website, and I want parents to, if you just go to northsouth.org, and then if you go to learning journey, I have been, like I said, I have been answering some of the questions, and I think this is very relevant to what some of the questions that you are asking. And then there's a lot of information that I understand parents are looking for. Can you see my screen, Desi?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So this summer, we're actually offering some of these classes that will help answering some of these questions. And also, there was a question on how valuable Olympiad classes and math classes are. I think that question is coming to you, Maya, but I think it is very valuable. Getting into any super competitive contest is going to help your child, especially if they're looking for a admission into a STEM field. But so what I want to say is I think most of the people here are high schoolers, and then also there are some middle schoolers. For the high schoolers, we're actually offering classes for SAT and math preparation. And then if you go to this website and then go to learning journey, and then if you click on know more, you can see the class dates and then the class times, and then you can read about what exactly we are going to teach in these classes. And also for advanced level, we have this bio Olympiad class and physics Olympiad class. And then Priya, if you're on, Priya will talk about the Olympiad classes more. This is the first time we are offering from North-South. And then we also have math AMC 10-12 preparation classes. And we couldn't find any coaches for AME, otherwise we would be offering that as well. But then we also have some opportunity for kids to kind of participate like in discussion forums and talk about what's going on in the society with generative AI and how is this going to impact, and the ethical context that we need to take when we implement solutions like this and all that kind of stuff, which the college will be very much interested in, knowing that the kid is actually staying top of what is happening in the world, and then they really understand and connect it. And then colleges are rating classes. So all this stuff is there. Please take a look, and registrations are open. You can click on that, click here to register. You will need an account with North-South to register for these classes. If you need any more information on these classes, just email to learningjourney@northsouth.org, and we'll be more than happy to connect with you and answer your questions. That's mainly what I want to talk about. And this will be a summer program, and this will be like 6 weeks of classes with 4 different subjects. And as you can see, the fee is $500. Dr. Priya Krishnan, if you are on, do you have anything more you want to say about the Olympiad and physics Olympiad and bio Olympiad classes?
Sure. I actually want to piggyback on to what Maya had said. So one of the takeaways from what Maya had said was, if you're passionate about something, like if you really like biology, if you really like physics, then one of the things that you could do in high school is one of the Olympiads, the Physics Olympiad and the USA Bio Olympiad. One of the things we've noticed is a lot of the kids, when you do AP Bio, or I guess IB Bio, that is when you take the Bio Olympiad. And unfortunately, the Olympiads are very competitive. It's like very hard to make the cut. And it requires not like 1 year of just the AP. If you really want to do well, it actually requires maybe 2 to 3 years of serious Olympiad prep. And one
A
of the,
day.
go ahead, Maya.
I'm just saying hours a day. It's a lot
Yeah.
of prep for Olympiads.
Correct. So it requires a lot of prep. So one of the things we noticed was that is where we had a deficiency. We've never offered Olympiad classes before, specifically USA, the USABO or USA Bio Olympiad. We have the Chem Olympiad, and then the physics has the F equal to MA or Physics Olympiad. And so for the first time, we're offering these Olympiad classes. These classes are by no means exhaustive. So like Maya said, you'll need to study for hours at a time. But if you start early, say you start in like 8th grade, you start 8th grade going into 9th grade, then in 2 years, you will be where you need to be. You know, we start from the basics, and these classes will build your foundation for these Olympiads. This is a very unique because there are some prep classes for these bio Olympiads, but they are not very well organized and they're not very well structured. And so we are attempting to do that, and I'm hoping that this year, you know, while we introduce these Olympiad classes in the summer, we are going to continue on to the fall to build on this foundation. So I wanted to kind of let everybody know about the USA Bio Olympiad classes and then the Physics Olympiad, which is F equal to MA classes. And then in addition, we have Science Olympiad. Now, Science Olympiad, a lot of kids have probably already done Science Olympiad in middle school. And then when you come to high school, you build upon your knowledge. However, supposing you haven't done Science Olympiad in, say, elementary or even early middle school, but want to do it in high school, we offer these classes that'll kind of bring you up to speed and give you an opportunity to kind of learn. Science Olympiad is also like very interesting, very focused, and very challenging in different ways. I have been a Science Olympiad coach for years, and only recently I kind of, because I've done more work with the North-South Foundation, I've stopped coaching Science Olympiad, but in NSF, I'm now, or North-South as it's called now, I'm now coaching Science Olympiad classes as well, and helping develop the curriculum for it. You know, I would be happy to take any questions any of the parents have. And then Maya, if you want to add to anything that I'm saying, or if you have experience in any of these Olympiads, everybody, I've never talked to Maya before, so this is going to be her honest opinion. So go ahead, you know, if you can talk a little bit about that, go ahead.
Sure, I'll keep it quick because I do want to answer the questions before people have to leave. But I did Science Olympiad when I was in 9th and 10th grade. I think I had to leave because I didn't have much time, but I think that Science Olympiad as a whole is more focused on like specific subjects. Like when you join that club, you're going to be assigned to like 2 or 3 different topics. Like for example, mine were detector building and geologic mapping. And within those, you do a bunch of research. You figure out like you have like a bunch of knowledge about that. And then there are like a variety of tests that you can take. There are some that are more experimental based. So it's like a team effort where each person has specific like assignments or specific topics that they focus on. So I definitely think that, you know, if you're interested in getting into Science Olympiad, but you're concerned about lack of science knowledge, classes could be helpful. You can just jump in as it is. I think that a lot of schools have like teams that have individual coaches as well. It's definitely something that I would recommend. It's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it a lot. You know, it was a good way to bond with other people too and get a lot of knowledge in one topic in particular. There are also a lot of other things. If you think your knowledge is more general rather than focusing on like a specific topic, then you can go for things like Science Bowl, Quiz Bowl, all of that. Anyway, I think we can start answering the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, Narayana and Priya. And Priya, you should be able to see the questions tab in your login, so you can answer it.
And I can read it for Maya. I have been marking a few
Perfect.
that are important.
Yeah, I see that. Priya also can do that. So,
so one of the things, Maya, that the parents are asking, I think this is an important question. they're asking how do they stop getting penalized for attending a competitive school because of the ranking, right?
Great
And
question.
they're asking, is it better to go to an average school? Unfair
This is a
benefit.
great question, and this is something that I've thought about a lot myself because I chose to go to a private school rather than, well, my family chose to put me in a private school rather than our local public school. And I've definitely thought at times that maybe if I had gone to that other school, like I would have been able to see even more competitive success because I would have been better. But I think that when it comes to schools like that, it's not only getting into college that the goal is, right? When you go to a specific kind of school, like at my school, everyone is incredibly academically focused. And when you're in that kind of an environment, it fosters a sense of competition, right? Like a healthy sense of competition where you're like, okay, this person is achieving so much. Let me achieve as well to be like with my peers. It shows you that it shows you so many things that are possible. It gives you so many like extra resources. So I don't think that when it comes to just college apps, then maybe if you have gone to like a certain school and then you go to a high school that's like relatively lower than your level, then maybe you have an opportunity at getting more like college success than you would see otherwise. But there's a million other factors that go into it too. Like some of the worst off schools, they may not even send people to the top colleges at all because the colleges are thinking like this school is so bad that the kids aren't going to be academically prepared. I don't think you should ever make a decision about what school to go to based on what college you want to get into, unless it's like a very, very good, it's like a competition between two like very, very good schools, and then one is like, at most you should make the decision based on cost and based on the atmosphere that you want to be involved with. So I say there are effects, but you can never really properly account for them because there are positive effects and negative effects. So I don't think you should worry about that much.
Thank you.
Yeah. One other question, Maya, that a lot of parents are asking. I think we still have 3 minutes, so take
Sure.
I
as many
have a little
questions
bit
as we
extra
can.
time, so I'm willing to
Yeah.
stay over.
Y-
They're asking how can you stay on top of all these multiple different things that you're doing without getting stressed out and are running a nonprofit and all that stuff. How do you manage your time? So they're basically asking for your advice on how their kids can manage their time.
People are always asking me this, and it's very much like you have to find out what works for you. Like I manage my time through like a lot of different things. Like I use a planner, but I also use a million other things like, to remember things. I use Gmail notes, I use Google Calendar, I use random alarms on my phone. Like I've just found a system that works for me that reminds me of things that I need to do when I remember, and I work with that. So whatever your kid like, the more you get involved with, the more you realize, okay, there are things that I need to stay on top of, and the more you'll automatically get used to staying on top of all of it. But like if you don't want to do something, then you're not going to bother. Like you're not going to take the time to think, okay, I need to get this done. So always it comes back to finding something that you really like. And if you're doing some things that you really like to do or that you find engaging and entertaining, then you're going to go out of your way to just be like, does this work? Let me try doing this alarm this time. Let me try setting this kind of reminder this time. Let me try this. Let me try that. And eventually something will work out for you. So I don't think there's any one system that you should go with. Just start and it'll all come together.
And there are also a lot of questions on ACT and SAT, and they're asking if they should be taking both. And also
No.
there is a new digital format, if you can talk about it.
Yeah, sure. I'll talk about that.
Okay.
SAT and ACT, they're like exams that are standardized, right? You take either the SAT or the ACT. And they only consider colleges only require one. The vast majority of colleges will take either the SAT or the ACT, but they only need one. If you take two and you submit both scores, you may think it's a good thing, but colleges will often see that and be like, this person is taking too many tests. Is that all they care about? They don't have any other interests. So submit either the SAT or the ACT. You can, of course, take both, see which one you're better at. Like the ACT has a science portion as well. So if you're more confident in science, you can try the ACT, see if you do better on that, and then submit that if you do better than the SAT. That one is scored out of 36, so it's a completely different scheme. And then there's a digital SAT, which is I think a new version of the SAT that College Board has been putting out. It's recently, like, everyone has been taking it. I was the last administration before that happened, so I know basically nothing at all about the digital SAT, but all I know is like it's taken on a computer, it's shorter, and there's less of a time crunch. Historically, it was like the SAT is so fast and they have so little time to do the problems that it's like, impossible to really handle it properly. You can get like confused just because of that time issues. But because, you know, they moved it digital and there's like less questions and all of that. Yeah, there's a few different changes like that. And then they also have a new change that's like, based on your performance in the first section, they'll give you an easier or harder second section. I don't understand how it works. No one does actually, but you can see, you know, you can do a little research, find online forums where people who have taken the digital talk about what the experience was like. From now on, all SAT is digital. I don't think the ACT is the same. So if you really want an in-person, like on paper test, try the ACT. It's just, yeah, that's what I know.
And I also posted a link in the chat where you guys are I answered for one of the questions where you can actually get the practice tests on College Board. They're all available. If you just Google for it, you can find it very easily. It's not too hard for the
Yeah.
parents.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Let's say we are at
sad
12:30,
to-
so there are
yeah,
some questions for Priya, but what I'm saying is asking people to email learningjourney@nasa.org if they need any further information on the summer classes.
exactly. And thank you, Narayana. Thank you, Priya.
And I think
We
they
will.
dropped, oh, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, they dropped my personal info in the chat, like the message with my website and my email. So again, just
Yes,
strongly
I-
recommend checking out the website. And then if you want to send me an email about anything, like I'm happy to answer your questions. So just reach out to me. You can just put
Perfect.
my name on LinkedIn if you want to find me there.
Yeah, I put it on the chat too. So, or they will see your presentation tomorrow anyway. But as long as your time permits, you just let me know, Maya. We will go with
Yeah,
some
I've got 10
questions.
more minutes.
What's on the board? The one is, I see some colleges have automatic admission. Can you explain what it is?
Automatic admission isn't like a big thing. Like there's certain states that have that where students can sign up for an automatic admissions process or something along those lines. And then,
I can talk about it, Maya. I'm in Texas, so I'm very familiar with it.
oh, okay. Okay, go ahead.
So what it is in Texas, if you go to any public high school, and if you are in top 10%, then you are automatically admitted to any of the colleges in high school in Texas. So they have to take you by law. Only one that does not conform is UT Austin. They have 5% or 6%, not 10%.
It is 10% for UT Austin. I think with UT Austin, the thing is that they don't necessarily accept you to your major. So they can accept you, but they can put you in a different major.
Yeah. They are at 6% now. They may go down to 4%. So I'm in Austin, so I'm very familiar with what they're doing.
Okay.
So yeah, but yeah, like Maya said, major is not guaranteed, just the admission into the school, right? And then depending on, usually they expect you to be in top 1 to 2% of your class in your high school if you want to get into one of the competitive majors. But other than that, it's just wherever they want to put your kid, they will just give you like 2 choices or 3 choices and ask you to pick from
You
those.
don't have to be like, if you're not in the top 6% or whatever, you can apply separately and then they can consider like it's holistic, right? So they can consider things like your extracurriculars and say, we still want this person, even though their grades aren't like top notch, like if you're going to a competitive high school, right? That's the place where the school that you go to matters, because oftentimes there can be less competitive schools where you can easily get to like the top 6%. But again, still don't think it's such a big factor to determine, because in the schools you may not be like as academically motivated because you're not surrounded by that kind of a set of people who aren't like as interested in academics. Also for automatic admission, California also has a similar program. I think it is top 6% of public high schools get admission into one UC. Usually that ends up, practically speaking, being UC Merced, which is kind of the lowest tier UC out of all of them. So if you apply to a UC and you don't get into any of them, you can always go to UC Merced.
Thank you, Maya. And another related question about the early decision is, you can apply for only one school, right? For
Early decision, yes, you can only apply to one school.
One school, and you are stuck with the decision. Can you
Yeah.
apply them again as a regular
No, you can't.
application?
You have to apply
Yeah,
the
so-
next year if you want to, and you probably won't.
If they
We don't-
defer you from early edition, then they consider you for the regular admission
So
cycle. There is no
deferral is-
application again. Yeah.
Deferral is
But-
interesting because that's basically saying, okay, we considered you, but we can't make a decision right now. So we're going to push your application to the regular pool and consider it again. That happened to me this year. I got deferred
Oh,
from
that-
an early decision.
That's an automatic way, or it is
Huh?
you have to reapply?
No, it's
No
automatic,
reapplication.
just pushed.
Yeah, okay.
But what gives you that this is then you can submit more information later for the college
so
to
you can
say
submit
that,
a,
okay, yeah.
Okay.
you can submit a letter of continued interest, which you can search online for templates. It's basically saying, I'm very much interested. This is still my top choice. Here's some stuff that happened since I submitted this application. It's like a letter.
Yeah, and what they want to see is that because you are in your senior year, between the time you applied for revalidation and by the time the regulation, you actually improved yourself, and those are the kind of things they are seeing in that continuation letter. So
Yeah, they want to see like whatever you did in the time, and they also want to make sure that your senior year midterm grades aren't falling off. Like a lot of people slack off in senior year. You want to make sure you still have like the same kind of grades that you had before you applied.
so we can go on forever. There are more questions coming in, so
Yeah,
they see it's
yeah,
up to
so
you.
many,
Like,
I saw
Yeah.
one that I saw one that I actually felt like answering. It
Yeah,
was asking
please.
if I had a mentor for my nonprofit. I
Mhm.
don't even know how that would work. Like I basically started my nonprofit with my friend. I don't think we had any kind of mentor guiding us or anything. We mostly found our info online from other people who had done similar things. All of that. We kind of worked through it on our own. I know there are definitely mentors at time that can help you kind of get set up or like can give you ideas, can help you like form the business itself, legalities, all of that. And you can get a letter of rec, but I wouldn't phrase it necessarily as like a mentor. I think it's more along the lines of it would be good to have someone who kind of saw your journey through building your nonprofit. And if there's someone who like saw that, you can just have them write about your nonprofit, and it's like kind of proof that you did it. They can be like, they started by doing this and then they kind of build up to this in the end, right? So having like a mentor in that sense who just like sees your journey, gives you advice once in a while, a letter of rec from someone who's followed your entire journey can definitely be helpful, because it's again like it shows that you actually did what you said you did, because a trusted adult is confirming that. If you want like any help setting up a nonprofit, anything like that, again, like reach out to me. I have a lot of resources that my friend and I used. I know how the legalities work, all of that. I'd be happy to help you out.
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
mean, just
Yeah,
as
go
a
ahead.
parent, I have 2 kids, and my daughter actually graduated from UPenn last year, and then my son is going to Stanford. So please email learningjourney@nasa.org if you guys want any more information like this. Maybe we can ask Maya to come back and do another webinar for you guys. We just want to know
Yeah.
like what questions you have, and we want to make sure that we're addressing those questions. There are a lot of good ones. Like Priya is a Science Olympiad US bio coach, and she actually has state winners. And this year she coached for Brain Bee, and 3 of the kids actually went to nationals that she coached. So we have really a lot of good people here that can give you a lot of good advice. So just reach out to learningjourney@nasa.org, and we'll be more
Yeah,
than
just
happy
one
to help.
question that I just wanted to answer. A lot of people are asking about like
Yes, ma'am.
extracurriculars and all of that, and like which ones are weighted more. It all
Mhm.
depends, right? Like I'm saying, in a specific situation, if they're looking for a tuba player, then suddenly your tuba extracurricular is weighted higher, even if you have the other stuff that's like more important. There's no such thing as an extracurricular weighted higher than the other. If you just do it, if you achieve more with it, the better. Like if you earn more money, or if you get like within like a job, or if you get more things to donate from a nonprofit, stuff like that. There's no extracurricular that particularly has more weightage. Just find the thing where you've had the most impact and put that at the top. How many extracurriculars are recommended is interesting, because on the Common App, which is the one most schools use, you have 10 slots for extracurriculars and 5 slots for like awards that you can put down. So in that case, like you can do more than 10, but quality is always better than quantity. Focusing down on 3 or 4 extracurriculars, even if that's all you have, is much, much better. If you're raising like, I don't know, lots of money, if you raise like $100,000 with one nonprofit, but you don't have that many other extracurriculars, that's completely fine. If you're like have a president role in a super big organization, as opposed to having like a million different like smaller roles in a bunch of different other things, it's usually better to have something like that. I mean, of course, it depends. Like having just president in one role of like a nonprofit is not that much better than having like a lot more. But it's all like better. But in general, quality is better than quantity. I'm just saying. So don't think about it as I need this many extracurriculars. Think about it as what can I do that achieves the most impact, that gets the most like the high numbers, all of that stuff.
Yeah, and
Right.
one thing I want to add, and I think Maya mentioned this too. I just want parents to be careful. Like, it really doesn't matter what they do in elementary school or middle school, even if they win like national, international championships. They're really looking at what you did in high school. So I just make sure that your kids have something.
won the Scripps National Spelling Bee, which is great because you get a lot of monetary prize, but that doesn't help at all for college applications because they don't consider anything you did in 8th grade.
So Maya, you know, my son won it, right? It's Nihar.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But
You
I-
want two of them.
he didn't put it in his application. So
yeah, you
I
won
mean,
it in
it's
like
not,
5th
not
grade,
going to
right?
get them anywhere. So I just want to give some advice here to the parent. And also, you don't want to the 10 extracurriculars. You don't want to pick them from the same subject, same kind of things, right? You can't write about I did science, I like 10 times.
I disagree with that because I think that colleges always want to see like a spike, right? They want to see you focus on certain things. They don't want something that a lot of colleges say is they don't want well-rounded students. They want a well-rounded class. So they want a class full of students that do all sorts of different things, but each student should be completely focused on whatever they want to do. So if your passion is science, do everything science. Like go for it. Absolutely. Put that on your app. Show that you're passionate. I have a friend who is interested in physics. He did everything physics, period. Like that's all he did. Maybe some like general science, but all physics. He got into Princeton early, so it's definitely useful to have
That's
like a
good to know.
spike in that. Yeah.
Yeah. And on the contrary, Maya, having too much of extracurricular, does it hurt you?
Too much of extracurricular only if it seems like you're kind of like making like in a lot of
Exactly.
cases you say like I'm doing 1,000 hours of volunteering in 1 year, stuff like that. Like if you're making stuff up, colleges will be able to tell. That's one thing, so don't do that. If you have too many extracurriculars but they're all like little things like whatever participant in National Honor Society, which everyone has, things like that, then it can hurt you to just, it may seem like you're just like filling up your resume with random things. But if you have meaningful extracurriculars, I'd say always put them or rather than don't put them.
Okay.
I also think like consistency is important, and that's why these Olympiads, like the bio and the physics Olympiad, you can do only one. Like if you want to do really well, you should pick one. Like if you want to do physics Olympiad, pick physics Olympiad and start training it for it, like starting the end of 8th grade.
Yeah. I
And
have
then when you come to 11th grade, then you will be like well prepared to take it. Similarly, Bio Olympiad, if you attend our foundational science classes and then our senior science classes, and then you take our Olympiad classes, you will be well set for, taking those Olympiads and then making the cut. But I think that, again, you have to be very passionate about what you do. And that means that you have to dedicate hours of your time to it.
Yeah, I think that I have a few friends who like were able to do very well at like both math and physics and maybe even coding on top of that. They're geniuses, that's different, but like also those things are similar. Like there's a lot of content in math and physics that I think overlaps. There's a few specific situations where you can do multiple, but it's always recommended to you focus on one. Just kind of drill down onto that. You can't like doing both is just like not a feasible time commitment. Like imagine studying for a spelling bee if you guys have done that kind of hours per day commitment. These Olympiads need that too.
Yeah, and I think one more thing, I mean, we're talking about college applications here, but like Maya said, let them pursue their passions. It doesn't have to be like they have to be the top in everything, right? So whatever they're passionate about, at the end of the 4 years, they should be able to put a real good story together than what they have done 4 years in high school. And also, she talked about college fit, right? That's really important. I think you should really know why your child wants to go to that college that he's applying for, or she. So you have to also research the school where they're going and then how good a fit it is. Like she said, you're really not going to know that year particularly what they're looking for, but in general, you can get an idea of what kind of classes they're recruiting, what is the pattern. But so you have to start doing that research from, I would recommend 9th grade, 10th grade. I mean, don't wait till 11th grade and say like, oh, I'm going to apply to this 10, 12 one just because my friends went. Let the kids actually go learn about the colleges. Somebody was asking about summer classes and all that at those schools. I don't know if that actually helps those camps.
Summer classes at schools often don't help. You have to do your research, find out if the program is actually like valuable, difficult to get in, teaching you important info. Do your research, look online. There's a million people on forums who have taken that class, and they'll be able to show you or tell you whether that's meaningful or not. Because a lot of times it's just some organization using the college's name, like I mentioned.
Yeah, we will continue. I think there's a lot of interest in this, like this is saying, and we'll continue holding stuff like this.
One quick question to you also as a parent, that how much of parent role plays in this whole thing, how much a student should take initiative and do it, or how much a parent should research and do it, or how does that work, or how did it
High
work
school
for you?
is high school is very stressful. They say that's what I learned with 2 kids. So you just stay and support your kids, whatever
Yeah,
they
my
want to
parents
do.
were
Make
just
sure that you build
on
a
the
good
side.
So,
environment for them to pursue their passions.
so you're saying let them
Yes,
take the lead and then you follow.
yeah, they have to, right? I mean, you can't force them. I mean, and they are the ones that need to go to the college once they're out of the house. That
Yes.
first year, they need to learn how to manage with themselves. So you better get them prepared in high school.
If you
Don't-
just, yeah, I want to add to that. Like, if you just like either force your kids to just do the Olympiads or something, or even just like make up stuff, colleges are going to accept you under the assumption that you've done all of that. And when you go, you're going to have a hard time keeping up if you haven't actually done what you say you did, or if whatever the kid did was like forced in a way, right? They're not going to be able to keep up with whatever the college expects of them, because there's a reason that college accepted them, but that reason doesn't actually have anything to do with the kid at all. So suggestion is always, let the child take the focus. My parents, half the time, they didn't know what I was doing until I told them, like, to come on this day, stuff like that.
Yeah,
I second what she's saying because, I think that as in high school, as parents, our responsibility, I think, is just making sure there is food and then time and how the kid is able to manage time. I felt like I was a unpaid chauffeur for most of the time until my son could drive. But I think that one of the skills the children need to learn is time management. Once they learn how to manage time, and the only way they'll learn how to manage their time is if we let them learn how to manage time. And they have to fail a couple of times, mess up on a homework or do something, and then they'll realize and they'll be able to optimize their skills. So we should be there to support them when they kind of, falter. And it's okay if they kind of have, a step in the wrong direction, as long as they are able to understand and we're there to support them and support their mental health, because it is a very stressful time.
Sorry to interrupt, but I actually have to head out. So
right. Yeah, thank you, Maya, for all your time and effort putting it together.
getting late for
If we
everyone.
need any more focused ones, we will be in touch with you. And please apologize to your parents also on my behalf that I pulled you and kept you longer and forced you to do it today. But thanks everybody, and thank everyone for attending. And I hope you got something out of it. We will send a link to her presentation as well as the recorded video tomorrow by the same time. And hopefully, you can go through, and then we have her contact information, or you can always contact webinars@northsouth.org or learningjourney@northsouth.org for more information, more questions, and more everything. So thank you for attending. And then when you go out, please fill in the feedback form, and then let's know how we did today. And also in 2 weeks, from 2-3 weeks from today, we will have another webinar on soft skills for success. We'll watch for our emails. Thank you, everybody. And thanks,
Bye,
Maya.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Narayana. Thanks, Priya. We
Thanks,
will
Lisa.
Reach out if you have
okay.
any other questions. Always available.
Always available. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I will be in touch with you, Maya, too.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
I'm
Priya.
gonna,
Bye.
yeah, I'm going to end this.